Welcome to the Self-Reflections podcast. I'm your host, Claudia Geber. And with us today, we have an incredible guest, Steve Bodie. Steve's journey is one of resilience, hard work, and overcoming adversity. From a rough upbringing, nearly dying, to navigating life as a Royal Australian Navy clearance diver, and now a successful business owner and father, Steve has literally faced it all. In this episode, he shares his story of personal growth, mental toughness, and what it truly takes to push through life's toughest challenges. Stick around as we dive deep into his experiences and the valuable lessons he's learnt along the way. Thank you for joining me on the Self-Reflections podcast. I'm Claudia Geber, and today we have Steve Bodie with us. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode.
It's all right, my pleasure. It's nice to be asked.
We usually have individuals on the podcast that have a unique story to tell and also be able to give our listeners a little bit of direction in life, and that's where our paths crossed. For me to be able to encourage you to share your story on our podcast. What drew you to sharing your story on the Self-Reflections podcast and inspired you to go into detail to share that with our community?
Well, there was a few people that have actually tagged me and shared your posts and stories off Instagram, and I think on Facebook as well. There was a few that came through Messenger of, hey, go on this podcast. So it was like obviously the local community of the gym. Saw that of your sort of advertising space, and then we're like, hey, go on this. So I think there's about 7 people that sent it through. It's not my first sort of podcast around that whole self sort of improvement or, that whole theme that I read about self-reflection. So it's, it was an easy decision to come on and hopefully share a story that people can take something from, inspiration, whether it's fatherhood or business. Something
Amazing.
From me.
Thank you. Can you tell me about your early life upbringing and what were some of the challenges that you experienced?
Yeah, so where to begin? Upbringing, so I'm from Yamba in New South Wales, up near Byron Bay, tiny little surfy town. Was originally born down here, but the entire family moved up there when I was about 4 or 5 years old, like everyone. Grew up in just a remote town with not much going on except for surfing and fishing. Everyone goes to the same school, high school and primary school. It was a good childhood. Growing up on the beach, learning nippers, how to swim, how to surf. I think it was an amazing childhood. Had its hardships about it. I was bullied at school, primary school and high school.
Wow. Just
couldn't avoid it. Don't know why, but it just happened. And it was severe too, like not just emotional, words. It was physical throughout primary school and at high school. So I hated it. I actually hated school.
That would have been so rough.
Yeah, and to the point where it got so bad that it was affecting me in the classroom, where I had this full disconnect between, even English, mathematics, the whole lot, and I just wasn't learning. I thought I was dumb, but there was a way that the teachers just weren't engaging, I guess, with myself, and then I was rebelling in a way to the classroom because I didn't want to actually be in the physical presence of school. So yeah, in a childhood perspective, that was probably one of the roughest times, was just going to school to try and learn, realizing that the teaching style, I just wouldn't learn that way, and then get bullied at the same time. So yeah, young childhood was rough.
Not a good time at all.
No, through education. In terms of the family side of things, my parents had split when I was 8. I think I was about 8. Long story short, mum had got custody of me and my brother. Ended up going to Brisbane for a little bit. And then I went a bit out of control up there and hated it because I was away from the surf and my friends. So
how old were you when you were there?
Well, honestly, I was like 9. 9 through to, I was only
still
just
a
9
child.
or 10. Yeah, bubba. And rebelled up there because didn't want to be there around all these BMX skater kids from the city. And eventually got sent back to my dad. By the time I was back with my dad, things had changed for him and his life. Not so much for the better. I think. And, a lot of alcohol and bits and pieces from what I remember through a lot of therapy and stuff that I've done with psychologists and, improving myself over the years. And, by the time I got back to him, I fastly realised that I was looking after myself, and had to just take care of me from about, I'd say, probably about 11 onwards.
Wow.
I was looking after myself, like taking myself to the bus, back from home after the bus, making lunch if there was any, breakfast if there was any, Wheat Bix with water, nothing for lunch at school at times, not much for dinner, but Vegemite on toast at times. It was hard. And I didn't know any different growing up. This is what it was, smashed orange juice and Vegemite on toast 24/7, thinking that was normality.
You survived, right?
Can't even remember a steak in my life, but it's just, pushed through it, thinking it was normal. Still had my other friends that I surfed with all the time. So in my eyes, it was great at the time, surfing and skating, even though school was terrible. It just was what it was. And then I guess a turning point of my childhood was when I was at home one night on my own. I think it was a Friday or a Saturday night. Dad was at the pub, and I don't even know till what time, but I think I was 11, nearly 12, and we had a bunch of locals break into the house. I was on my own, hiding in my bedroom.
Oh my God.
Terrified. I remember hiding. I remember the feeling of being on my bunk bed under the covers, bawling my eyes out, shaking, because these people were in the house stealing stuff.
Yeah.
And just no idea. Like,
what child would have an
terrified
idea, and to not have any security or safety net or anything to protect you in that time?
Yeah.
That definitely would have induced a whole lot of fear in the moment.
My nan and pop found out, and don't know what happened between all of them after that, but I was soon living with my nan and pop. So my pop took me in.
Yeah. Were they up there around Dad as well?
They were 400 or 500 meters from our place we were renting, down the hill. So soon found myself living with my nan and pop, which is to this day one of the best things that's ever happened to me. So I got to see a healthy relationship between two people, married. They've been married for a long time until my pop passed. And, I saw what hard work looked like and discipline. Sometimes you don't want to do things you've got to do. And, it wasn't until I was older that I realized that when I was young, my pop, they did take me in, and then my pop went and got another job, nearly another 2 jobs.
Wow.
Just to feed me and get me through school and all these other pieces. So, it was an interesting childhood, but
quite a shift as well from what you described to then having someone to care for you and be there and support you.
Yeah, I saw my dad go from partner to partner, and he dragged me with him, and I got the instability of that throughout the whole time. I never really felt like I had a home in Yamba, where I'm from. Like the beaches and the place is home, but I never had a family home. That's something I've craved my whole life. I've just never had one. And it was hard, like going through that, and then going to Nan and Pops and having that rock solid stability and discipline, and table manners and this and everything that our old grandparents used to follow. Old school values. It changed me, and I think he saw a lot of the youth in my area, just being reckless.
Rightly so, as youth can be.
Yeah, drinking and smoking and trying drugs and just everything that youth would get into. And in my town, there's not a lot of work. You would either leave and go and get a career and make something of yourself, or if you stayed, most of the guys that I knew I went to high school with or whatever that stayed ended up just shacking up with a chick. Kids pregnant and working on a trawler. Not that there's anything wrong with that if they're happy, and so be it, but not for me. And my pop saw that, and he got me my first job, 2 jobs actually, at 12 and a half.
Wow.
I was cleaning a pub in the morning before school with him, and then I'd go to school, I'd come back, I was allowed to surf for a little bit, and then I would go and stock shelves local supermarket 5 days a week. So he taught me the essence of hard work and how to save money.
Very early on too.
Yeah, how to save money from 12 and the reward values of that. So although my childhood was very disruptive early on, and there is still things that I'm working through, the later part of that before I enlisted was, how would you describe it? Like it set me up for values later in life, and how to rely on yourself and how to work hard. So
take my hat off to your grandparents, because it's not uncommon to be in tumultuous environments and not be able to have a lifeline out, and to be able to be provided that and given some fantastic values to set yourself up later in life is priceless. It really is.
Yeah, it's something that I absolutely treasure now, and you know, I wish I'd give up anything to get him back, you know, but it's something that I treasure. So, you know, the lessons that he taught me that I only realize now as a father and as a businessman, as a, you know, an adult, that it's like, well, you don't realize this stuff back then, but then as you get older in life, it becomes very apparent that your childhood is so important to who you're going to develop yourself to be in the future. So
absolutely. What was young adulthood like for you as you were developing?
Honestly, as I got into my teen years, high school again was terrible. That's from the bullying perspective. I just don't know why I didn't fit in, why it happened.
Yeah,
it was what it was. I just made peace with it. That, you know, I was not the smartest and you know, not the most liked, but that was just due to the educational system and the learning system. Teachers just at the public school, they didn't have time to focus on one kid, and you know, just, I don't know, it just didn't happen. So when my pop saw my lack of school ability going into my early teens, and you know, my academics not being there, he really wanted to try something different, and that's when he enlisted me, but he put me in Navy cadets.
Yeah.
And I remember going there, getting a uniform, getting a name sewn on, and you know, these stripes and colours, and you need to iron it and be professional, and what, you know, everything that the Navy resembles, core values. And it didn't matter who you were. If you had a higher rank, you had to respect that person and call them by their rank, regardless of, you know, anything.
Yeah.
And part of me just thrived in that environment where if I worked hard, passed the tests, or I worked hard and got this done, or I could work hard and get these new skills, I would get another badge, or I'd get another rank, or I'd get another stripe, or I'd get this.
And how did that feel?
Oh, this reward-based system you would get praise for being good and performance and discipline and following rules and instructions and orders, and something I'd never had in my life.
Yeah.
Routine.
How old were you when you actually started?
I was 14.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
14.
Yeah. So still really developing your sense of identity, sense of self, and to be able to get structure and rules, like you're thriving on it.
Yeah,
it
I think I was nearly just turning 15.
Yeah.
Because I did about a year and a bit in cadets before I enlisted. It just got to the point where after being in cadets, and you know, I know a lot of people laugh about it, like Air Force cadets and this as you're younger, but for kids that don't have that really home structured environment and good parental role models and, you know, all the things that can set you up in life, that gave that to me. And I remember, you know, going on a trip to Canberra and doing an excursion for parades, and I loved it. It was exciting. So when I was in I was 15, I was nearly 16. Again, schooling, I was coming up to my school certificate in year 10. Not a lot of stuff was going well. And I remember being at work at night stocking the supermarket, and I just got a pay rise. I remember working actually when I was 12 and I was getting $4.10 an hour. Oh. And I remember each time I got my birthday, I was 13, I got $4.70 an hour. And then 14, I got $5.20 an hour, and I was so excited I'd get this extra 60 cents an hour.
Yeah.
It was just crazy. But I remember being 15, nearly 16, I got a pay rise into like the $6 range. And I don't even know if it was legal or not, it doesn't matter. But I remember getting this pay rise and going, oh my God, I've actually saved up enough to buy a new surfboard, my own surfboard.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, a couple $100.
Yeah.
And I bought this new surfboard, And all my mates were like, oh my God, how did you get that? This new Weber afterburner thing, epoxy surfboard. And I was like, I've been working 2 jobs for, 2 years.
Yeah.
And after I saw that response of my peers and my mates going, oh, that's awesome. Like, how'd you get that? And then me going, oh, I actually worked for that myself. It gave me a sense of pride that I can actually achieve something and other people can actually, like, not in extrinsic value, but like, I don't know, I just got praise for like the hard work. Oh, that's awesome, And it was the first time I swear to God, it ever happened.
Look, I think it feels good when someone's able to like you said, praise us for the effort we put into something, and a reward comes from that. It's not just the surfboard, but it's the acknowledgement of the hard work that you've actually put in to get the surfboard.
Yeah. And it was just so different. And then I remember 2 of my mates went out and got jobs like 3 days later.
Yeah,
and
because they wanted what you had.
Yeah, and they saw that and they're like, oh, cool, I can do that too.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until then that I went, oh my God, I'm actually doing okay. And then I was in school. I had like a breakthrough moment. I was in school. I was in English. Hated my English teacher. And she used to treat me like a piece of shit as well. It was just, is what it is at that school. But I remember sitting there and I was like, I don't know if I can swear or not, but I was like, I hate this place. I do not want to be here. And then for some reason in English, I started writing down numbers and doing maths. And I was like, okay, I'm working 5 hours a day right now and I'm making like, I don't know, $30.
Yeah.
And then I was like, imagine if I'm not at school and I can do another 8 hours. And then I did the maths on, I could do the current 5 hours plus another 8 hours. I could do 13 hours a day and make like, oh my God, I could make like $100 a day, $600 a week. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here?
It sounds like your eyes were just open.
It was literally just a light bulb moment at 15 when I was just getting bullied and not having a good time at school and working because my pop got me to work. And I just went, what am I doing here? I can spend my time out where people actually are enthusiastic about me doing manual labor and seeing that the reward of that manual labor is actually bringing other praise from other people, like family, saying, oh, you got 2 jobs, that's awesome, mate. And I was like, I'm out. And I whinged and complained. And I remember my dad saying, you're going to finish your school certificate and that's it. As in, like, there's no ifs, ands or buts. You do that, then see how you go. If you hate it, we'll discuss it afterwards. I remember going in, I did my school certificate, I gave it all. Did okay, just the average, whatever. But I was in year 11 and I knew that I had the opportunity that I could leave. And I was 16 and I was at cadets, I was still working and everything just aligned. And I remember sitting down at the dinner table with my pop one night and I said, I want out. I want to go do something. And he was like, well, before you leave school, what are you going to do? I said, I want to be a Navy diver. I want to go and be a Navy SEAL. I want to go and I just want to join the Navy. I'm out. I just want to go do that. And then, I enlisted at 16, 9 months. I had to wait. I remember there was like a 2 or 3 month wait period from when I'd sat at the dinner table and been like, I want out. I hate this. And then when I could actually put the papers into the defence recruitment, you can't enlist till you're 17 legally, but you can enrol earlier. So I put in the application, 16, 9 months.
Wow.
Away we went.
And what were the early years in the Navy like for you? Because
honestly,
that's still very young.
Very groundbreaking, we can say. As an underage kid in the Navy, when there's all these adults that are partying and going crazy with each other and just exploring everything as young people do in their 20s and stuff. I remember being down in HMA Cerberus at the training school in the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria. I got a bus the whole way down there, got off and just thrived it. I've been in cadet so long that I just knew what it was going to be like. So excelled in everything to do with the recruit school, even though I was so young, I was a bubba. And a part of that sucked as well because I was under 18 and I wasn't allowed on leave. So by the time we actually got leave from recruit school, weekend leave to go out and run amok, I had no car. I think I had my I think I just had my red peas.
Yeah.
And, no money and no way to get anywhere or do anything.
Yeah.
And all these people would go and leave and they'd be like, let's go. And they get in cars and buses and they'd all go to the city, to Melbourne and whatever.
What did you do during that time?
I was only allowed out from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Had to leave at 7, dressed in a certain criteria, sign off. And then I was obviously not allowed in pubs and clubs and where everyone else was.
Yeah.
And then, had to be back by 9 o'clock, signed on and checked in bed.
Yeah.
It sucked.
Yeah, it sounds
Even that
like
was
it.
hard.
Okay.
So I'd made this commitment to go in the deep end and work.
Yeah.
And, the paycheck started coming in. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was more than I'd ever earned in my life. So I didn't really care in that regard. But at the same time, it was like, oh, look at all these people having fun and doing this. And I'm still the bubba. As if like I didn't fit in. Still had that concept of I didn't fit in.
Did you feel like that was something that pushed you to try and fit in, or did you always just be authentic to yourself?
No, I tried to fit in.
Yeah?
Yeah, I did. 100%. I don't think I was my authentic self at all. And for a long time, I always tried to fit in. But there was always part of me that kept working because I knew that was my thing for me. Doesn't matter what anyone thinks of me. You know what? When we do a written test or we do a shooting test or we do this, we do that, I'll end up beating them all anyway from performance.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if they like me or not. I'll just do that for me.
So that's what your head was at the time?
Yeah. And I think that made it worse at times, is that people were like, this guy, and then I'd end up beating them all anyway. And they'd be like, this guy. I couldn't segregate me. That was like a double-edged thing. But look, I got posted to Darwin on patrol boats. I was on a Sail 6, for a little while. And then it got to the point where I was a bosun's mate when I first enlisted. I wanted to be a Navy diver, but the recruiter, I was so young and naive, the recruiter was like, nah, you don't want to do that. You want to do this, it's weapons and this. But they just needed the job filled. They didn't care. Ultimately served me well anyway. So went to Darwin underage. Like the drinking capital of Australia, I swear to God, Darwin is wild. If anyone's listening and has been to Darwin, it's wild. And ended up with a fake ID.
Of course you did.
Went out with everyone, and honest to God, I felt like I was an adult. And I went and partied and just ran amok the whole time I was there. It was life learning lessons and great memories I've still got, And it got to the point where I realised that I was not going to be a clearance diver because my chief would not sign the paperwork for me to transfer over to become a clearance diver.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not sure exactly what happened. I remember cracking the shit and was like, you know what, I'm my own person now, I'm my own man, and you're going to stop me from pursuing this career to be this like Navy SEAL. F you, like. And I just went, you know what? I know how I can get out of this.
Yeah.
And I asked a lot of people, what's the best advice you can give me? And one of these guys was like, Steve, the best thing you can do right now is discharge. Get your dad to pull consent for you to be in the Navy because you're under 18.
Yeah.
So they're still the parental guardian and giver.
Okay.
Pull consent, you'll be home in 3 days.
Yeah.
And then once you're at home, re-enlist, like apply again to re-enlist as a clearance diver and wait. And I did.
Interesting.
That
Okay.
was it. I remember going to my chief
Yeah.
and saying, hey, Dad, can you call this number and say I'll withdraw consent for me to be in the Navy? And he did.
And did it work out in the way that it was?
I was home in 4 days.
Wow.
Yeah, packed, everything, removalist, the lot, see you later. So I was back home.
And sometimes you have to take a kind of step back to be able to project yourself to a completely different pathway.
100%. Like it's in your control. And sometimes you do need to just take the knee and yield, so to speak, and just let whatever's going to happen, knowing that you're doing something to potentially benefit your future, even if you don't know if it's the right decision. No one, I don't think anyone always knows that it's going to work out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did. I remember I got home to Yamba. I'd put on about, I don't know, honestly, I put on a lot of weight, probably like 10, 12 kilos. Looked like a different guy. I had this high and tight haircut, clean shaven, a lot more muscle. And that was to the locals, like, oh, where have you been? Like, what have you been doing? You just changed dramatically. Everything, my persona, the way I carried myself, had some money in the bank. And I was 18 now. And yeah, when I got home, I just was like, oh my God, these guys are still here doing, like some of them were still in school or just finishing school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you guys are doing nothing with your lives.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I can't stay here. So I went and I asked my mum if she could have me. So I left the Amber.
And where was Mum?
In Brisbane.
Oh, yeah.
And I went to live with Mum. As soon as I got there, I got a job landscaping, hard yakka.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I applied for the Navy as a clearance diver, and then I didn't know how long it was going to take. I just sat and waited.
Yeah.
And
hard work until it paid off, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of hard work, and another incident that shaped my life to what is today.
Tell me more.
I was 18. I was clubbing, for everyone that's been to Brisbane, like out at the family and the Met and the Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And we would do that every weekend. We're 18, I'd go out with the boys. I went out one night. I was probably getting on it too much and drinking way too much.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going out one night with the boys to this place in Callumvale called the Pressure Lounge. It doesn't exist anymore. And it was a bad place with some bad dudes. It was R&B, gangster, a lot of bad cats in that Logan area. And I got way too drunk one night. I mean, like, I have no memory of this, but I think it's from the accident, not actually the drinking. Apparently we walked home from the pub. We got back to my mate's place and he wanted to hop in the car and go do burnouts. And I have no memory of this or why I did this, but I apparently grabbed the wheelie bin, put it down behind the car, sat on it like a bull rider and hung onto the tow ball. And my mate started driving.
Just with your hands?
Yeah. And
okay.
He started driving. And about 100 metres down the hill, I apparently came off head first and was doing cartwheels at about 45, 50 k's an hour.
Jesus. And
was unconscious for 4.5 minutes. Face was twice the size, fractured my skull, had a 3 millimeter hemorrhage in my front left lobe of my brain, which ultimately changed a lot of my personality, according to the neurosurgeon. Teeth are fake, split up the lip, split through here. Yeah, again, it just proper messed up. Proper. Like,
wow.
When I got to hospital, I've got two memories. The first being waking up on the road and just seeing an ambulance, 4 cop cars, blue and red lights everywhere, and I was in a neck brace and I couldn't feel my head. Mm-hmm. I couldn't see out of this eye because it was completely bloodshot and covered and open. Yeah. I couldn't swallow. I was a mess. And
that's traumatic.
There was cops everywhere. I just remember over my eyes, and then next thing you know, I'm getting put in the back of the ambo. Nothing. And then eyes opened again, I'm getting wheeled into Princess Alexandra. And I remember seeing the faces of everybody in the waiting room. They wheeled me into the hospital. I remember seeing people just cover their mouths and just like, oh, I heard these ladies just gasp. And I hadn't seen what I looked like yet.
Oh, I'm getting like shakes as you're...
And I remember getting into the room and people being everywhere. Like, I was in this like critical management place. And the guy was like, do you want to have a look at yourself? And he showed me this mirror. And my face was destroyed. It was bad. It was huge and it was so bad. And they put me under deliberately because I went for brain scans, I went for neck scans. They had to clear me head to toe. And then the next thing I remember waking up and it was a neurologist and a neurosurgeon, and he was like, mate, you've had a bleed in the brain.
Jesus.
You're under critical watch for a period of time. You should be dead. He was like, your blood alcohol was like, I can't actually remember the number. It's on my discharge paper from QE2. And he was like, your blood alcohol was monstrous. He said, in my opinion, if you weren't so drunk, you probably would have had a seizure or had a fit because of the amount of the head contusion that I had, the amount of trauma I had, down my body. I had, I hit the road, so the gravel rash and everything was, it was bad. Mm-hmm. And he was like, you should have probably had a fit, how hard you hit your head. And he said, and if you convulsed and pumped blood, the bleed probably would have got bigger and you'd be a vegetable, or it would have killed you. So by being so drunk, I had the accident. And also at the same time, by hitting the road, being that drunk, my body just relaxed and didn't do anything.
Which again may have saved you from making it worse.
catch-22.
Yeah.
And I had short-term memory loss. I remember my mum and my brother coming into the room and I didn't remember who they were.
Yeah.
Memory came back about 24 hours later.
Yeah.
It was bad. They wouldn't discharge me from hospital until I could do certain memory things. They'd come in with books every day and I had to read a page and then something else, and then they'd leave and then they'd come back a day later and be like, hey, Steve, can you, like, what did we read to you yesterday? And I had to remember and do all these things for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's just brain training.
Yeah, before I got discharged. Once I got out, I wasn't allowed to drive for 6 months. Wasn't allowed to dive underwater. The risk of epilepsy was through the roof because I've had a brain injury.
Yeah.
And I go, well, there's my chances of being a clearance diver gone.
Yeah.
And initially I was like, oh, there goes that.
Yeah.
And once everything started to heal, I got to the point where I had to make the decisions to go and do the medicals because I'd put them off for the retraining, the re-enlistment, sorry. So I went in, I put them off and I went in and they said, oh, have you had any medical this? And I said, yeah, look, I've had an injury. And they were like, look, this is serious.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to be underwater doing bomb disposal and tactical operations and shooting guns. And you're probably going to need to get cleared by a specialist. So I had to see this neurosurgeon again. And I don't know, I don't really remember how it happened, but he went into the deepest depths of articles and studies from God knows how long ago. And this guy made it happen. And he was like, you can dive, you can this. And they signed me off. I thought it was a miracle. But after the accident, I was sober for 3 years, 3.5 years. I went to the gym. I remember this is my first exposure to a gym in my life. Now I own 2, and I walked into this gym and they said, oh, how are you? Like, I was 18 and like, you know, how can we help? And I said, oh, look, I'm trying to be a Navy clearance diver. They're these big, muscly, fit, like guys, like Navy SEAL guys.
Yeah.
I just need someone to help me
get there.
Be that, get that. I'm currently a landscaper, you know. And then I remember they walked me upstairs. I signed up to Go Health in Browns Plains. They walked me upstairs to this guy, Trav. I love him. And I remember seeing him. He was a bodybuilder at the time. He's a big boy, big boy. And I remember seeing him just going, holy hell. And then they said to him, this kid wants to be a clearance diver. Can you get him strong and fit? And I remember him saying, all right, let's sit down and talk. And we sat down and talked. And as we got through everything, Trav was like, I'll make you a deal. I'll do you a good price, you know, for PT 3 times a week, blah, blah, blah. He said, but if you drink or you don't follow your diet in any way, shape or form, I'm not training you and you're not going to be this action guy, you know, that I wanted to be.
Good boundaries.
And I was like, done. I did not touch a beer. I remember my mum getting cranky because I would just have Weet-Bix every morning with this like set diet and cans of tuna and rice every day. And I put on nearly 20 kilos of muscle in like 14 months before I got back in. I was just hell-bent, landscaping every day, pumping calories and training like a nut 6-7 days a week, running. It was just like, it was like a level of desperation to reclaim myself and reclaim my life. Yeah. And I just turned myself into an animal. And then I finally passed all the tests and got in and re-enlisted. And in 2010, I was back on another bus, going to HMAS Penguin to become a clearance diver. Well, hopefully pass the tests, you should say.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
And that, we haven't even gotten to like talking about anything else.
Yeah.
Can I take my hat off to you, someone who has had a challenging upbringing, to keep pushing, to have such a traumatic incident happen where it was literally life or death, to just keep pushing themselves and keep going. What do you think it takes a certain individual to have that characteristic trait, or did you build that over time?
I think I built it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I built it. Like, well, my pop helped build it when I was young, and I wasn't in, control. Like, he shaped me in a way, but
Yeah.
I just, yeah, I don't know. I think just with the level of not fitting in a lot of my life and my want to be, again, I'm 34 and I'm still on this journey of this person I want to become and what I want to achieve and bigger and better. And yeah, I'd say I built it. There is definitely a level of, you've got to have something in you and something about you. Because not everyone's obviously the same, and there's a rare few guy that I've met that's got the same determination that I want, or the lust for this better life and more. It's not just about money; it's just more in life.
Of course.
There's a lot of people that don't have it, so whether that's built or whether it's just in me, I'm not sure. But I think it's something that's just been developed over time.
Tell me a little bit about being a clearance diver, from what you can share, of course.
Yeah, so the backstory, I enlisted it in 2010 after my first stint in the Navy as a clearance diver. Got down to the dive school. Because I hadn't had the standard recruit training and then the category training at Cerberus before going to the dive school, I never got all the physical conditioning and everything that the other guys get before they actually get to the dive school and get to try selection. Selection back then was 10 days, absolute hell week, like absolutely brutal. Like I personally lost 13 kilos in 10 days.
Wow.
We started with 37 guys and we finished with 6. It was brutal. I shed 2 layers of skin, I reckon, off my back to my ankles, my feet. I had blisters, like they'd bleed it. My boots would fill with blood every day. Blisters and bleeding under the armpits from chafe. Because we're not just on the land conducting stuff, we're in the water every day, diving at night. There's actually a documentary by the BBC on Navy divers. It's called Navy Divers. It's on YouTube. You can watch all the episodes of the training back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, this Hell Week selection test was brutal. The hardest thing I'd ever done. But I remember being on it and at times just being in the hurt locker so bad, and I would draw on the pain of getting bullied at school and just being like, fuck this.
Yeah.
Fuck these guys. I'm going to prove everyone wrong. Everyone and everyone in my life that's ever doubted me. And I would just use pain to get me through.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff in my earlier life, I would use pain. Pain of bullying, pain of not fitting in, pain of everything, teachers not giving me time and whatever. But it got me through. I used it just like a bullet out of a gun and smashed it. And then got an A-class pass on CDAT, on the selection test. Got onto the dive course, did well through the dive course. And then, became a clearance diver. Went into the clearance diving team to start with. Did a lot of training, a lot of upskilling. Went to, where did I go from there? Went to a mine hunter, hunting bombs, out on a ship, spending a lot of time away from that.
Yeah.
During that first stage, went and did border control, like stopping the refugees up above Australia. That was a big government thing at the time.
Yeah.
A few trips overseas with, bomb disposal units in Guam and America, and a few places, New Zealand as well, doing bomb disposal. Yeah. Which was awesome. Got exposure to everything.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Just leveled up, became this person I'd always wanted to become. I had my health because I was drinking. I'd been sober for 3 and a bit years then. Was probably the fittest I've ever been in my life. And mentally, probably one of the strongest parts I've been in my life as well, because we were diving every day, threat of shark attack. Half of your dive time is at night in shark-ridden waters in Palm Beach and Pittwater, Sydney Harbour. It makes you a very strong person. So from there, I wasn't getting promoted just due to the reasons above, even though I'd had really good reporting and a CO's commendation a few times, and I just got the shits with the Navy. That I felt like it was restricting me. So I decided to volunteer to go to the Tactical Assault Group.
How old were you when you did that?
I was 20, would have been 24.
Yeah, so still quite young.
Only 25. And it's a voluntary thing. if you're a clearance diver in the Navy, you can select to go and do the commando course at the 2nd Commando Regiment at their training cell, and you do, around about 80-85% of the commando course, excluding a couple little things that are privileged to them, and you don't do their selection because we've done ours previously.
Yeah.
But you go and get all the weapons training, hand-to-hand combat, guns, close quarter stuff. It's awesome. And I went into that. I passed the selection to start with. I passed all the aptitude testing with flying colours. That's something that came out of it, actually being in defence and then going into the Special Forces. Was doing aptitude training. My brain just found this way to analyse problems and shapes and patterns. And I finally realised that it wasn't me at school. It was just a learning style. And there actually is a way I learn, and that's audio and visual.
Yeah.
Books don't even bother.
Yeah.
But show me how to do something, I'll learn it once.
Yeah.
Tell me how to do it and show me how to do it, and that's it. So finally picked up on my learning style at 24, 25, and excelled extremely throughout the commando course, and then passed. So I qualified to serve in the water platoon at the Tactical Assault Group, down south, and worked in counter-terrorism for the next 2 and a bit years.
Wow.
So.
Okay. What were some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them throughout, I guess, that time?
Workplace challenges, nothing really, but personal. Fitting in again. There was times where I headbutted with a lot of other guys. The way they screen you is they screen you based off aptitude, physicality, performance. So you get this massive group of alphas, essentially. Yeah. They're all 6'2", 6 foot, 100 and something kilos, built for war. Yeah. In a way, that's what they used to screen for. So, a lot of things have changed now. But yeah, they used to screen that way. You used to walk into a room and there's just like 20 dudes.
Machines.
You look like a football team. Yeah.
Yeah.
People used to say that when we go out on the beers together all the time. It was crazy. But yeah, just trying not to headbutt people and just do my own thing. I was obsessed with bodybuilding at the time. Like, I just discovered who Arnold Schwarzenegger was, that he wasn't just the Terminator. He was actually a bodybuilder and Mr. Olympia. I had no idea what any of that was. And yeah, just had this fascination of like YouTube videos of personal motivation and you can be better and push yourself. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? Didn't even know what self-development was. Didn't even know the word. Yeah. But I was like, what is this motivational stuff? And fell in love with it. So again, I got into bodybuilding training specifically just to be the biggest, strongest guy I could be and try and beat all the rest of the boys physically and, all that sort of stuff around work. And just fell in love with it. Fell in love with training and gyms and the whole physical side of life. Yeah. So. And I have, even today, I've had a heap of recordings already highlighting how important movement is for your mental health, your well-being, and to be able to have something that you can express all of that energy and emotions in is so important. I found very quickly that was my therapy. Yeah. I would go to work. Sometimes I'd get frustrated with certain things and then I would go to the gym afterwards. I didn't even care if it was 9:30 at night. Everyone would be at the pub, whatever, and I'd just take pre-workout and I'd go to the gym and pump iron. Yeah. I'd travel and go to a gym I hadn't been to before and just smash the weights for an hour and a half. Yeah. Loved it. I was young, my body could handle it back then too. So with age comes some, the
creaks and the joint issues.
Yeah, the creaks and the sore backs and the sore necks. But I was in my 20s, like, you can drink, and wake up and drink again. And, like hangovers weren't even a thing. Yeah. So, but honestly, like I was a single man when I was younger and I was just living my best life. Yeah. I was fit as a fiddle. I got so involved that I studied my Cert 3 and 4 in personal training, did my Masters at the Australian Institute of Fitness, then went into business management at 25, finished all of that. Yeah.
You weren't still in the Special Forces, were you?
I'd done my certificates before I enlisted.
Oh, yeah.
In the SF side. And then once I was in the SF side, I was studying business management at the same time. Yeah. And then, from there, what do I say here? Got injured, just say that. And it affected my kidneys really, really badly. And still to this day, I've still dealing with that.
Yeah.
I got sick on the 6th of November 2016, and that marked the end of my Special Forces journey, unfortunately, and I just couldn't rehabilitate to a level of tactical operations that they needed. And they gave me the option: you can go and sit behind a desk and transfer category and be a Storby or be an officer or just do something that's land-based.
Yeah.
Or you can get out. And I said, if I sit behind a desk, I'll end up killing myself.
Yeah.
My mental health it'll drop away. So I chose to leave defence.
How old were you when you left?
I was 28.
Yeah.
I left on the 15th of September 2018. And it was what it was.
How did you feel when you were told that that's no longer something that your body can allow?
I hated it,
Yeah.
but because the entire 12, there's certain things I can and can't say because of the operational side of what was going on in the world at the time. But I had a certain set of skills that a couple other guys had, and we didn't have a lot of fresh recruits to come in and train up. So I was operational a lot of the time on what we call recall. And I had a heat intolerance due to this thing that happened, and I collapsed one day on just a training exercise with a weapon, and it just affected me. So it sucked. And then as I tried to rehabilitate myself, I actually went back to the diving school where you train. So I was an instructor now for the new recruits, running a selection test and everything I went through. And I tried to rehabilitate myself. I was in the pool swimming and I would get gassed, and the PTs were trying to get me through to pass the physical testing standards that I needed to go back to be operational.
Yeah.
No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. I think sometimes the body, like we experience something that just tells you this is where it ends. You are now ready for something new or different.
Yeah.
So
it was brutal.
As much as I can imagine sucked, and you're having to say goodbye to a big chapter of your life that you've always wanted to engage in.
Yeah, and from the point where I got sick to where I was discharged, like personally, my life went through absolute hell. I was with someone at the time that I did want to marry, and it broke apart. We used to train together. We used to do so much amazing stuff together. We were best friends, and it fell apart because I couldn't train anymore. I couldn't do all this stuff, and it started to deteriorate.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it didn't work, and it is what it is. But that led me into this sort of next journey where I knew I was going to get discharged. I'd made peace with it. I knew that was going to be my choice when it came up. I was waiting for the medical board to make their review. And I was single. I was like, I'm going to pack my shit. I'm out. I literally cancelled my lease in my house, moved on to base, got rid of all my possessions, put all my money in the bank that I'd saved and everything I had. And I had pretty much a cupboard of clothes, and that was it. And I was like, and a laptop. And I was like, as soon as I get my discharge, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I can go anywhere. My sister was living in Denmark at the time. I was going to go and live with her for 2 years and just base myself in Europe and just travel every inch of the country and, just get exposure to a different side of life that I'd never done, because from a young age when I had nothing to then joining the military and being under the thumb of having to request for time off and never traveling unless it was for work, I thought, oh my God, I want to do this traveling.
And did you?
No.
Ooh.
Insert.
Okay, what happened?
Insert my little princess's mum. And I'd met her, and not very long into dating, she fell pregnant with Leora. So, threw me off course, and I just went, you know what? That's it. If we're going to keep it, clear your stuff out. I'm moving in. And that was it.
And
Family, let's go. Because I never, ever, ever, ever wanted the upbringing for my child that I had ever from those early years.
Of course.
So there's been a part of me that's always wanted to be a dad, and a very good dad. And
it definitely flipped your life completely to a different direction.
Yeah.
And how was it being a dad?
It was amazing. I remember getting out of the Navy, in September, and then she was born in December. So I had 3 months really to myself where, Jess was already 6 months pregnant at the time, and I just knew she was coming, so it was just prep for a baby. And I really quickly flipped my military brain, this like analytical side of me, to being a dad.
Yeah.
And I think the being so methodical with work actually paid off being a dad in those early infant stages where it's like feed, burp, nap
Routine.
change, feed, sleep, burp, like just all the little things of
Yeah.
a kid of what you need to do when you get up, burp them, feed them, change a nappy, put it to sleep, like when they're just little.
Yeah.
And I think it made it really easy through the infant stage where I could just get up at any time of the night, because I was already trained in a lot of sleep deprivation anyway, or I could just get up, get her out of the cot if she's crying, give her to mum would feed her, I'd go change a nappy, back on, again to mum, and then take her back out, and I'd turn Netflix on, watch a series, and I'd burp her, get her to sleep, put her to bed at 2:30 in the morning. I did it every night, mostly every night.
But because of your training, you were able to actually do it and still function.
Yeah, and then I'd get up at 5:30 and I'd go to the gym, and I'd pound the weights, and then I'd come home, get coffees, and come back, and they'd just be getting up out of bed. So it was, I don't know. I think she was a lifesaver for me. Even though at the time I thought I was going to do this, and it flipped my life the complete other way, I think she was just sent to me for a reason. I was probably either steering down the wrong path, or I don't know, but I wouldn't change it. Wouldn't change a thing. So fatherhood.
Yeah, I wouldn't know, but I hear it's definitely a handful, to say the least.
Yeah, it is.
So I hear it definitely changes you too. So it sounds like it had you as well.
Yeah, it did. It taught me a lot of self-sacrifice, a lot of compromise. You've now got this tiny little thing that is purely dependent on you. And from the very first day, we got induced, and it was pretty rough. We ended up having to go for an emergency Caesar, and the anaesthetic doctor just pumped her full of drugs. And by the time Leora was out, the drugs had just hit, and she was, nowhere to be seen, but just out of it. And I remember I had to do skin to skin.
Yeah. Those really important initial things, right?
Yeah. So I got to do skin to skin with Leora. I carried her out with the midwife. I got to do skin to skin. I got to feed her, my pinky and a little syringe of colostrum, and it was just like, wow, this tiny little first moment of her life, and I got to do all of those little things at the start.
Yeah. That would have been really special.
It was just an imprint moment of she's yours and you got to take care of her.
Yeah.
And it just changed everything. I think chemically, I don't know if something shifts in your body, but for me, it was just, it was just a light bulb and a life changer.
So then what happened as Leora entered the world and entered your life? What happened to your trajectory?
As she got a little bit older, I've always had those big dreams of, again, I don't know where I'm going to be in 10 years. I know what I sort of can see for myself, but I've always had big dreams and big goals. And I said to her at the time, Leora's mum, I was like, hey, let's go to Brisbane. I've got family there, my mum, my brother. I've got friends there. Houses are a lot cheaper. Let's go up there. Let's buy a house and a business and start. So we packed up, off we went. At the start, everything was fine. Bought into the business and into my first gym.
Yeah. And
learnt the ins and outs of training and business management and how to run a gym and how not to run a gym. Unfortunately, it didn't work out the way I thought it would. And then as we had separated and she'd moved back here to Wollongong, I said, okay, I'll just sell everything and I'll come down. Because I'd been like that my whole life in the Navy, so it's easy to move. I was like, I'll sell everything, come down. She'd moved back here, and I think I moved her down here in the February. And then in March, COVID.
Yeah.
This 2020 world thing.
Yeah.
I remember going out the front of the gym with the other director for 30 people, staff and PTs, and being like, sorry guys, you're all fired. Go to Centrelink. The government's telling us this. We don't know when we're going to open.
Yeah, wow.
Lost everything.
Yeah.
and I had to like pay her out, and I had to, pay my mortgage, and I just didn't know what was going to happen. Don't think anyone did, right? But
No.
I had another business that I was doing with the NRL, with the Warriors, cryotherapy stuff. And again, they just went back to New Zealand, and that was it. It was over. And I just remember going, I'm not going to be a victim here, and I'm not going to let this dictate my life and what I want. I remember I sold everything.
Yeah.
I sold the trailer, I sold the cryotherapy machines, I sold my car.
Wow.
I sold my truck that I had. Everything, every physical nothing screwed down to that house got sold.
Yeah.
And I was sitting in COVID like, okay, I've got this money here. We're not allowed to go anywhere or do anything. Like, what am I going to do here, to, I don't know, get ahead? Or like, no one knew what was going to happen. So I started renovating the house from the skills that I had as a landscaper. Built 3 decks, renovated the pool, put a spa in, did all this. I literally was just drinking beer and renovating every day because there's nothing else to do.
What else could you? Yes.
Yeah, there's nothing to do. And then I went, you know what? I'm going to try and like level up here and do something. So all day I renovated, and then all night I studied. I spent 17,000, nearly 20 grand at the Australian Investment Education on the Gold Coast, and I studied traditional stocks, options, and investment strategies. Went through all their basic course and their advanced course on option strategies. Learned the market inside and out.
Yeah.
Got very OCD with it because there's nothing else to do. And then what really turbocharged that entire thing was I was driving, because of COVID and the lockout laws on the Queensland border, and flying was cancelled everywhere. To see my baby girl, every 8 days I drove from Queensland, from Brisbane or Gold Coast, from Coomera to Wollongong. So it was 13 hours, 13 and a half hours one way. So every 8 days I got in my little car. I bought this $10,000 little Audi, cheap as, 1 tank fuel get me from Brizzy to here. And I drove all the way here, stayed at the ex's place for 3 days in her nursery, and she'd go stay with her mum, just to have her, and then I would drive home. And I did that for nearly a year before I could sell the house
and do something with,
and get, the border lifted and get down here to be here with her, like with my little girl. It was honestly one of the biggest hardships I think of my life.
Really?
It was so hard. Every time I would leave Wollongong in that car and I'd get through Picton Road and I'd turn onto the highway, I'd honestly, God, and being very vulnerable here, I'd probably cry for about 20 to 30 minutes.
Wow.
I felt so guilty as a father that I was leaving my baby here and I wasn't here, and I was heading back to Queensland. It was heartbreaking.
And compared to what you were mentioning before, where you were wanting to be there for her and never leave her and provide, to then have to endure that. It
was heartbreaking. Yeah. And again, it fueled a little bit of the, I'm not going to let this get me, and I'm not going to be a victim. Yeah. I had all these haters that were like, you're not going to see your daughter, families and stuff. And that's all changed now for the best. But everyone's like, you're never going to see her. You're going to be in Queensland, and you're probably not even going to move down. All these doubts. And I was like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong here. And like, I love her to death. And I don't think anyone even understood that level of like what we had. And I did it. I did it every 8 days for a year. I made that drive. And every single drive, I did an audio book on Audible on the way. 13 hours, 1 book.
Wow.
3 days, 4 days with her, 13 hours, 1 book on the way back.
Yeah.
I did nearly 40 financial investing strategy podcasts on fractional reserve banking, bonds, yields, stocks, options.
So really trying to make a challenging situation beneficial you as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, I sucked. And because of my learning style that I'd realised through Special Forces that it was an Audible thing, I just listened to audiobooks in the car. And I sucked so much knowledge out of Tony Robbins and Simon Sinek and you name it, like all these guys who have done personal motivation books and then also obviously financial stuff. I remember one of my mates, just before I'd sold the house and moved down to Wollongong, and we started talking because I just realised that the traditional market wasn't making me enough money. And I thought, what's a higher risk, higher investment vehicle that I could really produce some money from once I sell the house?
Yeah.
and it was cryptocurrency. So I spent the money and I got into an institute, and I studied my ass off and just went hard. And then, I spoke to a buddy that I hadn't spoke with in about 8 months towards the end of the year before I sold the house. And we started talking, and he was like, who are you? You're not this gym owner that, was this military boy still.
Yeah.
He was just like, man, I don't know what you've done through COVID. He was like, but you're
because he saw the growth in you?
Yeah, we hadn't spoken from,
Yeah.
Throughout the entirety of COVID. And he was just like, what have you been doing in your house for 12 months? Like,
and I really want to highlight what you said before. You said it a couple of times. You forced yourself not to be a victim of your circumstance. And I absolutely love that. And I've done podcast episodes on that topic before, because it's about really taking responsibility of what life throws at you and trying to make the best outcome for yourself. Is it going to be pretty? No. Is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. But if you can actually put effort into an outcome for yourself, like it's in the end, it's in your hands. Like you said as well, it's all in your control.
Yeah, it is. And I think there's so many people out there that just forget that.
Yeah.
It's like they just become victims, or not victims, it's probably not even the right word, but they just become circumstance of everybody else's choices around them, and they just go with the flow.
Yeah.
And this happened, that happened. And it's like, well, where's your boundaries?
Yeah.
Where's your self-respect? Where's your self-worth? Do you even know what you want in your life? Do you know where you want to go?
Yeah. Where's your self-reflective practice? Where's your communication? Where are you actually investing the time and energy to actually benefit yourself and your life?
Yeah. And I remember there was a certain point, I've told a few people this, there was a certain point after I'd done all that, I'd spent that 25,000 odd in tuition studying, and I was getting close to the house settling, and it was all leading to this crunch moment. And I remember sitting upstairs, I was on the phone to Joe, my coach at the time, and Joe was like, Steve, let's set some goals. And we were going through my goal process, and he was like, what do you need? What do you want? I said, well, I've got this much money in income every year. For me to maybe keep the house and still move to Wollongong, I'd need to create another $89,000, $90,000 a year. And he was like, okay. And he's like, is that it? And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to do that. Imagine if I could just keep the house and make another 90 grand a year. I was like, I could live in Wollongong, still have, my dream house here. And he was like, Steve, I've known you for 3 or 4 months now that you've been studying with me. Is that it? Is that what you want from your life?
Yeah.
Again, like for anyone listening,
you really set your like a constraint there.
He's like, it's not about money, right? He's like, is that it? Is that what you want? You want another 90 grand a year?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, but I just got. I was like, he's like, what do you want?
Yeah. Did you know what you wanted at that point?
No. And he was like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And I was like, mate, I'd love to be a millionaire. And he was like, okay, let's set a goal. When do you want to be a millionaire? What's a millionaire look like? 1,000,000 in the bank. Like, what does that look like to you?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, $1 million, and we set a goal, and we set a date. And he said, all right, I want you to go downstairs now. I want you to swim in the pool, put some music on, just do whatever makes you happy, and really think about it, like embody and manifest what the feeling is going to be like when you open your phone on CommBank and you see 1 and 6 zeros, like what that's going to feel like for you.
And when you went into that pool and did the exercise, can you name the feeling?
Honestly, it didn't happen then. It happened, I went down, I got in the pool, I was swimming, I was listening to music, and I was like, I was trying, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And then I went in and I got ready for the gym. It was a beautiful sunny day in Coomera. I was going to drive to Nerang and use the recovery center and train. And I remember I took pre-workout, got my bags, got everything, got in the car, and I was driving, and I was halfway down the M1 towards I think it was near Helensvale. And this song came on, and the song has a bit of nostalgia about it. It's my favorite song. And I play it all the time when I need to trigger something. And I had nostalgia from a long time ago when I was like 24 from, a period there with someone and around something. And it came on just by chance.
Yeah.
And the song's Come With Me by Nora En Pure. So for anyone watching this that knows me, they've probably seen it when I had social media.
Yeah.
It comes on all the time. I'd always play it. And it started, and as the beat dropped, something clicked alive. And honestly, I had goosebumps head to toe for 10 minutes. Radiated in my, goosebumps on my face and back of my neck. My body was like radiating. I've never, to this day, been able to reproduce that feeling.
Wow.
Wild. The most wild feeling I've ever had. I completely believed I was going to be rich and I was going to be a millionaire. And since that day, I have never had an issue with money.
Yeah.
Not one.
Mm-hmm.
And I am where I am today because of a lot of hard work, etc. But people that say manifestation doesn't work, I would happily say bullshit.
Yes, I agree.
Since that day, I've had no issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stress, yes. Hurdles to overcome, yes, like any businessman. But yeah, to a position where I'd nearly lost everything, had to, settle with my ex and get rid of all my businesses and cheat, and sell the house cheaper than what it was worth. And just beyond that rock bottom to go, I'm going to invest in myself here from study. And yeah, from there, now I am where I am. It's just been up only for, as they would say in crypto, it's been up only for 5 years now, 4 or 5 years. So,
so I am mindful of time, and I feel that we might need to do a second podcast episode to go into so much more detail. But given that you just said that it has been up for the last 5 years, what has the last 5 years looked like for you, and where are you at today? Yeah,
from the relocation to Wollongong, settling here, doing well in the financial investment side across multiple markets. I decided once we had that COVID hit that I'm in Wollongong now until she's 18. I can't go anywhere, and I'm going to make the most of it. So I decided to go into another gym and find somewhere local. Opportunity arose from COVID that somebody wanted out. I went and had a look at it, saw the opportunity, saw what it needed, just needed a big hug and a bit of a cash injection. Built Fitness Cartel in Albion Park. And the blood, sweat and tears went into that thing for sure. A lot of stressful moments to the point where I was on a blood pressure monitor and wild. So I was overworked, for people that watch this, when I say hard work, I mean, there's days where I do 16 to 20 hour days.
Yeah.
Sleep's not a factor.
I think when you're a business person, you have to commit to that for you to get ahead. It doesn't mean that that's where you're going to be forever.
Yeah.
But 100%. Any business woman or man that has done the crunch, it's a non-negotiable.
No one else is going to do it for you.
No.
And then base that around, I've been single for the last 4 years, and, around fatherhood, of raising a little one and having that time with her and being present too, not bringing work home.
Yeah.
And then building a business at scale. Again, we could probably get into more later, but, at the same time, I was running 2 other businesses. I was managing a fund, an Australian registered fund, and lecturing for students on 2 different things.
And the story continues, Steve. We are definitely doing episode 2. Okay.
Yeah. So a lot. But now today, the gym's been established for 2.5 years. And I'm very grateful and very blessed for the community that we have and what's been built and everyone's commitment to be a part of that. I cannot complain. So it's it's at a position now where maybe the hard work's about to kick off again with a potential expansion or whatever. But it's for anyone listening to this episode, hard work. I love to drum that home to people.
Yeah.
Hard work is not watching motivational videos on YouTube. Hard work is not having the mentality of I need to just do this or I want this. There's this point where I know so many successful people, and hard work or getting to that next level is not the theoretical side of planning and doing and researching. It is just hands-on, slogging hours in,
creating it,
hours in the trenches.
Yeah.
And you've got to put the time in to work. So overcoming challenges, like you said at the start of this. It's hard work.
Yeah.
Hard work will get you through anything.
Yeah. And in my channel, I share with listeners in our community on what they can do to strengthen themselves. What were some of the pivotal things for you that you can share with our listeners that even now you practice regularly, even though the slog is hard at times?
Honestly, even though the consistent hard work thing, to drum that home is one thing for sure.
Yeah.
Taking small snippets of time out for yourself to really remember where you came from and where you're trying to go. Sometimes you can lose sight of that, and I'm guilty of it. I've lost sight a million times.
Me too.
It's probably half the reason why I was single for a long period of time, was that I was working too much on the business and too much on my little girl. I don't think there's ever too much on your kids, but I lost the balance of me, Steve and Bodhi, and relationship suffered because of that. So.
Yeah. And relationship doesn't mean also with, it doesn't mean just with other people. It's your relationship with yourself.
Yeah, family and friends too.
And that too.
Yeah, you need to take time out to really realise where you are, where you've been, and where you're going. A lot of people say don't look back. But I'm like, you need to look back to realise where you were and what you've come, so you can be grateful and be present of like, oh wow, I actually have done this. And it gives you a positive reinforcement of if you can back yourself, you can work hard and you can back yourself to go to that next stage. You don't need to always rely on someone to have the right answer or the right time. Sometimes you've just got to rip the Band-Aid off and fucking go and trust yourself. And that's what got this gym done, honestly. Yeah. Especially on the back end of COVID, it was a big risk. I didn't know if it was going to come back. Yeah. COVID, it was just, but I backed myself and I went hard. So overcoming those hurdles and just doing the manual labor of whatever it is you're building, whether it's a psychology clinic, whether it's a building business, a plumbing business, or this, put the hours in. Just put the hours in. You get one life. Like I love reiterating that to people too. Like at some point you're gonna go. You don't know when it is. You could be 60, 70.
Yeah.
I'm 34 and I'm like, okay, if I'm in my mid-70s, I've only got 30 good years left. Yeah. It's like 30 summers, 30 winters, 30 springs.
Yeah, and that's not a lot when you think about it that way. And I often, even in my own reflective practice, like to think about what would I be thinking about my life and what I'm doing or what I have done at the age of 80. And will I be proud of myself? Will I be regretting things? Will I believe I have made the most out of every opportunity? And that's, I guess, why, and I will say this in so many of my episodes, that's why I call the channel and the practice self-reflections, because it's so important. And like you said, Steve, you have to be looking based on who you've become, who you are currently today, and who you want to be. It's a constant journey of development and growth.
Yeah, like sitting back, self-reflecting on my whole life so far. There's been people I've spoken to and they're like, dude, it sounds like you've lived 10 lives in one.
Yeah, that's why we need to do more episodes.
Yeah, it's I got so many stories and lessons and just, but this is me speaking personally for myself.
Yeah.
When I dropped that facade of wanting to fit in, caring about what others thought, and needing to succumb to others' opinions, and once I got rid of that and I just let the brakes off, that was it. Life just took a turn for the best, and I have no regrets. Doesn't matter if I made a mistake in anything, personal, relationship, business, no regrets. Everything's a lesson if you look back on it and you realize that you stuffed up, and you can look forward and not make the same mistake. No regrets. Doesn't matter the decision, whatever I've made, whatever I've done. I have literally no regrets, none, in any decision I've made.
And that's such a powerful, empowering and freeing thing to have and feel and say.
And there's a lot of people that think they don't care, but their body reacts in certain ways and certain things. When you fully embody that and you know it's true, and things don't affect you anymore, life just takes off on its own path. And and you will back yourself so much more from a work ethic perspective and an ideas and a creativity perspective, or as a father, whatever it might be, because you drop the veil of like this external shit. I'll just say shit, like social media and all that stuff. There's just so much shit. Yeah. And you just got to realize that 90% of it is absolutely fake. Yeah. People post the best of their lives, not the worst. And when you can just realize everything for what it is, that nothing really affects you unless you reach into it and engage with it. Like you're in control of your own car, and yeah, go for it. It's yeah, I love it. I love talking about it. It's something I wish a lot more people would realize, that they don't have forever on this planet, and time just ticks. It doesn't stop.
Agreed.
You know, midnight tonight, it's going to turn over. It's going to be another day down.
Yeah.
Like it's...
And another day to make a choice and create change for yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And on that note, honestly, we can keep talking, but I am going to leave it for today's episode. I am just speechless and did not anticipate any of that in today's episode. And I do really appreciate your vulnerability and being able to go on a whim and actually put yourself out there for our benefit as well. So I do appreciate you and your courage coming onto the Self Reflections podcast. For those of you that want to get in contact with Steve, I'll put down details in the description below. Also, if you would like to ask Steve or myself any future questions, or you would like us to discuss any topics, please write your comments in the write comments below. My brain. and we'll definitely circle back, because it sounds like there's so much more that we can talk about in so many different domains as well. And like I mentioned, I do appreciate your time and your vulnerability. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me.
That wraps up another episode of the Self Reflections podcast. A huge thank you to Steve for sharing his incredible journey with us today. His story of resilience, hard work, and growth is truly inspiring, and I hope it resonates with you as much as it did with me. If you'd like to connect with Steve or learn more about his work, be sure to check out the details in the description below. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course comment. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to explore, drop them in the comments below. We're here to keep the conversation going. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, take care and keep reflecting.